So hello.
Hey.
Hi. Hi. Did she hear me? And she's like, hey. Hey, girl. Oh, my goodness.
This might be a problem.
It's okay. This is our dog. She is half Rhodesian Ridgeback and half Australian Shepherd and a whole lot of piss and vinegar.
Mesa!
Mesa, stop it! Okay, she's still a little bitchy. Still a little bitchy, but not too bitchy.
Just kind of bitchy.
Yeah.
Well, we're back. 10th podcast.
Rabotat Radio number 10.
And it's our 5-year anniversary.
Yay! Rabotat Records is 5 years old as of July 7th, 2018, because that's when we had our first landmark event.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But first, let's do a cheers. This is a mezcal mule with a little bit of prickly pear juice, ginger ale, and this wonderful mezcal, Darumbas. It is delicious, and we love it.
It smells so good.
We don't normally drink that much, but we thought it's our 5-year anniversary, so let's cheers.
Cheers! Happy 5 years. I haven't tried this yet, so. Oh. The thing about this mezcal specifically is it's one of those ones that's not super smoky. It's just really, really nice.
It's nice and sweet. I really like it.
I'm going to have another sip.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you heard, we had a little Jaime Chavez sound effect in there. And that was something we're going to talk a little bit about with Jay Chavez's show.
Yeah.
In the history of Rabotat. And so I know a little bit about how this podcast is going to go, but the person at the helm is really Madame Alex.
Here we are again.
So, okay, what is this show about? This special podcast? Why are we celebrating so hard? So it's our 5-year anniversary, but what is this podcast going to be about?
Well, like you said, it's the 5-year anniversary. This is our 10th episode of the podcast. So it felt like a great time to celebrate and have a Rabotat Records retrospective where we go over kind of the history of how we came to be. We've had this conversation with so many people individually, I think, like you and me, either together, separately, whatever. But to actually like record it and talk about it is like a whole other thing, because we've never just like laid it out and been like, you know what? Because there's been some bumps, there's been some roller coasters, but it's been super crazy. And actually my favorite part about doing this podcast particularly was like listing everything out that has been accomplished over the past 5 years. It's pretty staggering, because I remember when we started out pretty small, and we'll tell you a little bit more about it. To see where we've come is pretty crazy.
It is. It's really exciting to see how much this label's changed and some of the bumps, ups and downs. So we'll talk about it. But let's jump into it, because this is good and I want to keep drinking it. And we need to celebrate.
The thing about mezcal, too, is if you don't drink mezcal, something worth noting about mezcal, this will hit you way quicker and a little harder than, you know, the average maybe liquor.
And I made this a 3-finger one. That's kind of how I measure these drinks. So it's a little bit more than normal. Normally it's a 2-finger, but Rabotat 5-year, I wanted to do a 5-finger, but I thought against it, so we're just doing a 3.
Can I say I appreciate you not killing me today? This would have been
Into
bad.
a drunken mess.
Yeah, no, and yeah, this wouldn't end well. I need to be able to remember the things that we did over the past 5 years to be able to talk about. So, on that note, why don't we do one more cheers? Just to like start it off.
To all the artists of Rabotat and all the people we've worked with through the years. This label is always stronger when it's surrounded by people that believe in the dream and believe in the vision, and we believe in you. So cheers.
So true.
And cheers to all our fans and the people who do listen to our music and have supported our music through the years. It means a lot. It's been difficult, and to say the least. You know, we'll talk about 2020, which we all know
what happened.
So yeah, so let's start. Okay, well, a little bit of a pre.
Yeah, do you want to kick off with where I guess technically we began?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. We both actually lived in Boston, Massachusetts in the year of 2012 and 2013. And 2013 is when we both graduated college. But we didn't know each other when we were graduating colleges. We went to separate colleges, but we actually lived within like 10 minutes of each other without even knowing it. And then when we graduated our respective colleges, we went to Valencia, Spain to get kind of an accelerated master's. It was a 9-month program, intensive, where you basically get a master's degree that is supposed to prepare you for the music industry. So we met there on September 3rd, 2013. I remember because it was orientation day, and Alex had never been outside of the country before, and she was a little culture shocked. Like, I'm from New Mexico, so growing up around Spanish speakers and different cultures and things, and I've toured the world before a couple different times in different areas, all kinds of different areas, and so being used to that, I was pretty much ready to go. Like, I speak a bit of Spanish, I understand a lot of Spanish. And I was just really enjoying the weather and excited to start this new adventure in this master's program. But when I met Alex, she had never experienced all this, and it was a little overwhelming. If anyone has, you should always travel to new places and see new things, even if it's within your country, because you do understand what it's like to be another person.
Well, yeah, you alone coming from New Mexico and going to school in Boston was already a good preface to you then, like, going across the seas.
Yeah, that was my culture shock.
Yeah.
Like, I had never seen, like, vast amounts of snow or subways. Like, the first time I ever rode a subway was in Boston.
Or pissed off Southie,
Like a crazy aggressive sports teams. New Mexico doesn't have any professional sports teams, let alone in my hometown. So to see, like, the Red Sox and the Celtics and the Bruins and all of that was such an overwhelming experience, and having access to a big city, like most people when they go to college, is a huge experience. But it's another thing entirely to move to another country, study somewhere for yourself. This is a master's program, and people who usually get their masters are people who are really self-motivated individuals who I think share a common goal of trying to better themselves. That is basically what a master's is. A lot of people get their bachelor's, but if you continue on to that education, it's because you want to learn something more. So anyway, I meet her the first day. She's completely overwhelmed, dumps everything out on me at this hotel balcony where we were having like an orientation, like meet and greet, kind of like networking, say hi, get to know everyone kind of thing. It's day one, and she had showed up late. So she shows up kind of towards the end. We weren't like drinking on a balcony at like 8 o'clock in the morning. We were drinking like
day drink. Well, kind of like what we're doing right now.
Yeah, like around the same time that we're filming this now.
Yeah, and to be just for a little bit more background, I mean, I'm from Maine. I went to school in Boston. I didn't have a far reach when I left and hopped and skipped and thought, oh, my high school Spanish is going to get me pretty far when I land in Spain. I literally landed in Valencia and looked at the cab driver and was just like, this is my address. And the guy was like, you know how big Valencia is? Like, good luck, lady. So after leaps and bounds of trying to get to school and figure out how to get to orientation, yeah, I showed up super, super late, disoriented, and lucky for Nick here, he got to be the first one I dumped on. So congratulations. Somehow you're still here.
But I felt some type of a connection, something that I wasn't quite sure that I understood yet. But I knew there was something really special there. And so fast forward to the end of our time in Valencia, when we were graduating, we had been together for months at that point. She was living with me, and we were talking about our dreams and where we wanted to go next and kind of what we wanted to do. Because once you kind of leave this bubble of this crazy experience of being able to study in a foreign country, and the campus that we studied at was this very futuristic, out of this world campus. Living costs were very cheap out there compared to living in America, so you could live really well and you could eat really well, and a lot of things that when you get out of college and you start your career, you don't necessarily have a lot of those luxuries. Not everyone, at least.
Yeah.
And that was true for both of us. So the whole time we're getting ready to graduate, for about 3 months out of this 9-month course, we're like, well, where do we want to move to?
Yeah, what are we going to do?
Where are we going to go? Like, what do we want to do in the music industry? And Alex and I have always, I think, been people that are more enthusiastic about the underground music culture, especially since we've been much more involved in music. Alex always went to underground hardcore shows. She loved niche genres.
Yeah, I'm a elder emo, hashtag.
Alex is an elder emo.
You find that out when you go to TikTok as a millennial and you're like, oh God, I've been tagged. But yeah.
Yeah, so. That is who she is. And I grew up listening to a lot of different classical music, but always finding a lot of joy in more of like the underground artists and more of the obscure music that the average person of my age maybe wouldn't be listening to. I'm a music nerd, so I loved that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so we knew that maybe the United States wasn't the place to go to next. And I was personally worried about wanting to start in the United States because of the mentality of the entertainment industry versus the creating art in the music industry. I think Alex and I are both people that really believe in the art, in the artistry of music, and not to say that the mainstream stuff or the entertainment stuff, when I mean stuff, I mean movies, music, film, TV shows, photography, Instagram influencers, whatever. All of that stuff is great, and there can be artistry to that, but we were trying to find something a little bit more pure. So the whole time we're hanging out and in Spain and we're trying to figure out where we're going to go to next, I went to Berlin for a music conference, and I was completely blown away. I spent 4 days there.
Change your life.
So and I decided that that's the place that we should go to, and I wanted to make the play to stay with her and to be on this journey. You know, coming from New Mexico and Maine, also too, it's like if we're going to stay together, we have to move somewhere together.
Yeah, which is a choice.
Right, and I'm from the Southwest, more towards LA, and she's from Maine, more towards Boston and New York. So where do you go and what do you do? So that was a huge influence on our decision too, is to go somewhere that we didn't really know much about, that we knew we probably could fit in, and I made the case for Berlin.
Yeah, it was kind of like a why not mentality. It was a very creative city.
We decided it after we graduated. We had walked and everything, and all of our friends and family are walking to go get something to eat after graduation, and I just turned to her and said, well, what about Berlin? And she said, why not?
Yeah, literally, why not? I don't know, maybe for better or for worse, that's been the mentality. It's been friggin' awesome, though, because I think that we've always talked about making yourself uncomfortable and doing challenging things to almost just test yourself.
Yep.
You're never going to know if you don't do it. And for us, it was like exactly what Nick was saying. When you're from two different parts of the country, we're just trying to see if this will even work. I mean, at that point, we had only known each other for less than a year. So just making a decision to go somewhere ambitious with somebody was pretty ballsy, but we did it. And
we did. And the way we did it is a lot of people ask us, well, how could you do that? Well, what ended up happening is during the summer, because it was a 9-month course, so there was no summer break for college. We received our government funding for college. You know, our federal, I call it.
Yeah, it's called student loan aid. It's
the
still
federal aid. Yeah, like
Yeah.
our student aid.
I'm still paying it off, everyone. It's fun stuff.
Right. So,
Yeah.
but when you're
Welcome
not
to the U.S. government.
and when you already are in too deep as we already had done a whole, undergraduate and a graduate, and we're in our last month of this graduate and taking out all this financial debt. We were like, well, we can afford to go to Berlin. We have enough money to get plane tickets, to get an Airbnb for a month. And to try to figure it out. Not knowing much about anything else, which is a pretty foolish idea. And as a parent, I probably would say that is very stupid. But
Surprisingly, our families did not say this.
No, but our parents trusted us and they believed in us
Yeah.
and they wanted us to do it.
Yeah.
So from our perspective, each individually, I'll speak from my perspective, I'm dating a girl for 9 months by the time we decide to go to Berlin. And I'm moving to a city where I don't speak the language. I don't really like super cold weather. And I'm going to try to get a job working in the music industry. And I'm going to try to continue to process and grow from all that intensive information I learned from this major. And Alex is with some guy that told her to go to this city. And she loved me, and she wanted to try it out. And she's the one who helped float us in Berlin because she had the steady job. And she was able to get a job through being in college at a small record label called K7 Records in Berlin, Germany.
Yeah, I had a opportunity to meet someone in France back in, it would have been 2014. And this person connected me with an incredible person at K7 Records without giving away too much information. Everybody there, by the way, that was one of the coolest jobs I've ever had in the industry still. It
was the most transformative for both of us, and we're rambling a bit maybe. It was transformative for both of us, but it also was transformative for both of us in developing this label.
Yes. Yes.
So Berlin is probably single-handedly the real foundation of what would become Rabotat and would become our philosophies. Maybe us meeting and being in Valencia, Spain, is what founded Rabotat, and the idea of this artist community of people coming together and working together. But Berlin is how we established our philosophy on how we wanted to execute that, and it's a philosophy that we still hold to today. For the most part, we have edited a little bit as we've moved around and experienced things, but our core philosophy is the mindset that we learned in Berlin. Boom. Okay, cool.
Nice. Cool. I can start.
Actually, I got
Your philosophy. Cool.
Something I wanted to talk about, though, too, is we're just resetting on everything right now. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I wanted to talk a little bit about Rabotat's mentality. We don't come from a lot of money, neither Alex or I. And certainly enough money to really fund a gigantic record label that can do all these lavish things. A lot of the stuff that we do is guerrilla. We do it ourselves. So we can't afford a super nice camera, you know, something that is just the most amazing thing ever. What we have is an all-purpose camera that we can use for photography and we can use for video. But the one problem is it shuts off every 20 minutes. So we have to get up and change it and move it. And then it gives us a second to check our audio, check our other phone camera, which is the one we're using right here. That's a phone. And we have one really nice light that we're using. I guess two really nice lights that we're using.
A ring light. Thank you, Jeremy Carrion.
Thank you. Shout out Jeremy. I love you.
For supporting us. And these amazing lights that have actually been used for lots of Rabotat productions that have taken place in our studio, because soft lighting is complementary lighting.
It is. And so just wanted to talk about that a little bit because we're going to get up a little bit and adjust. And I thought that if we do keep this in here, we should probably talk a little bit about that because we try to hide that a lot. But this is the 5 year. So we should talk a little bit about the process on how this label works. It's not some magic thing. Like Alex and I and the people we work with work really hard to do this.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's part of our philosophy. So I left off at Berlin, and that was the foundation of our philosophy. And Valencia was the foundation of our relationship and kind of what we wanted to do. So what is the philosophy of Berlin? And what was how did that relate to creating Rabotat?
Well, we met a lot of really cool people. I mean, we did in Valencia too. We have a lot of friends and a lot of people, like artists actually, especially from your time in Berkeley, Boston. We have a lot of friends that we've kind of gained over the years, people we've met, and everybody's got different skill sets. You know, you got chefs, you have graphic designers, you have musical artists, we've met filmmakers, all sorts of different widespread of creatives. And the cool thing is, we realized at a certain point that if we were doing this record label the way we wanted to do it, if we wanted to all encompass every type of artist, community, person under the bubble and do stuff together that is deep to its core Epicurean in its philosophy, that it would be fulfilling to the soul, and then that fulfillment would project into the actual how the record label would flourish and develop. At the end of the day, we are a community of people that are really nothing without the people who make it our backbone. And in our case, that is all the different types of artists that have joined us over the years, who we'll talk about as we go through our little, our retrospective timeline of Rabotat. We'll kind of go over these really spectacular people who've made us who we are today and made us so diverse and interesting. But Berlin, at its core, is that type of a city in and of itself. It's a creative city. It's been rebuilt too many times to count. The people there are amiable, but they're also welcoming, considering that the city of Berlin itself is just full of expats. It's like there are people there that have obviously been there for a really long time, like histories of families that have been there through the wall being up and coming down, and all these different historical things that have happened to that city. But it attracts so many different people, and that's what makes it such an interesting hub. It's got different cultures and communities. We're all hanging out, talking, getting together for dinners all the time. I felt like that was much more of a mentality that existed in Europe that we were partaking in more so than since we've been here, we've found out with the artists that we do work with and hang out with. I feel like the artists that we've been attracted to on the label are people who are diverse and unique and doing things that are pushing the bounds.
Oh, yeah.
But they're also people who really, at the end of the day, just want to like talk shop and also kind of talk creativity, talk about different things. We were talking the other day, because I had a really good friend of mine from college visiting the other day, and we were talking about how even just having her here is such an eye-opening experience, because you get these new ideas from people of just things you wouldn't think about, things you want to incorporate in your own life, or that you want to experiment with. It's a really cool thing to do. And I feel like, especially once we got through the pandemic, that became something that had to be shut off. So coming back into that's been really exciting. But that was where the base of the Rabotat philosophy started, was just knowing that we saw all this stuff happening in Berlin. We would meet some really cool people. One of them in particular, who we'll talk about a little bit more later, is My Secret Playground, a really good friend of ours. And we met him in Berlin. Talk about a wild and cool guy. Again, being from a small town in Maine, I didn't grow up with a lot of diversity in my life. And coming into Berlin and even meeting somebody like MSP, who he's a wild child. We've been on tour with him. We've been in Berlin with him. He is such a kind person, but he is also such an embracer of the wilder things of life in a way that, like, it makes it approachable and it makes it fun. People have a way of making things scary when they don't understand it, and that's why you have to open your eyes to different people.
I think Florian is a perfect example of Berlin.
And Rabotat, honestly,
and
of where
Rabotat.
we came from.
Absolutely. Florian has an amazing ability to create a community whenever he starts somewhere. He was an expat. He's an Austrian living in Berlin. He has a whole crazy life that happened before he moved to Berlin. And he decided to dedicate his life to music and to pursue his dreams. And but also enjoy the Berlin mentality of a carpe diem. That is huge, and it's something that is, regardless if you're conscious of it or not in Berlin, it definitely is something that exists all throughout it. And the thing that we kind of bonded with him over was electronic music. And when we met Flo, I call him Flo, when I met Flo, he was incorporating live music instruments with electronic music. And I come to Berlin, and I didn't start out as a DJ and a multi-instrumentalist wanting to do electronic music, techno, house music. I used to think that stuff was really monotonous, and my mind was just not ready to kind of like embrace that type of music, and I didn't really understand it. And it wasn't until Alex and I saw Disclosure before moving to Berlin that I really understood the musicality and the energy, and it's addicting, obviously.
Yeah, to be physically there in the presence of
the physicality of amazing electronic music. And Florian understood that. And Florian was incorporating electro swing into these DJ sets where he would do jam sessions, and he would invite all kinds of musicians from Berlin to get together, and it was a great way to meet someone. And I reached out to him on Craigslist. Just because I needed to find something that hopefully would at least pay, or something that would at least get me into some type of community in Berlin, because it was overwhelming to be there. And Florian really welcomed me in with very open arms, and he welcomed Alex in with open arms. We went to one of his shows before I ended up performing at one of his shows.
So fun.
And my first show with him was a very humbling experience, because I was trying to use a new way of DJing, a new way to perform with this band. When you DJ normally, you just have these decks, but I have to worry about trying to have a tempo that I can send to a drummer and all these technical things that I had just learned in school. And I'm like, okay, but I ran out of music. I didn't have enough music for the performance.
We're a little green. It's okay, though.
But I did it. Like, I made it through, like I'm sitting there. If you know anything about Ableton, I'm like sitting there warping things to grids, like while people are performing, and I have loops going, and I'm like doing all this stuff. And Florian had all these elaborate hand signals to signal the band. So I'm like this crazy conductor warping all this stuff. And Florian made me better that night. And every interaction I've ever had with Flo has always been one that I really do relate to him as like a brother. in music, and I know Alex does too. And so our time in Berlin and my time playing with Florian and spending time with Florian and the other people that we met at K7 Records, and going to these clubs turned our brain on to electronic music and the purity of electronic music. Because when you go to a club like Berghain in Berlin, they don't let you even have your phone out there. They will kick you out. It is not a place for you to be seen. You could get a photo of that outside, but the club itself, it's a place for you to be free. And that's a really interesting thing because that's what art ultimately is. And being in Berlin furthered our love of wanting to establish a community. Just with the philosophical with Epicurean for a second, Epicurean was all about finding happiness. He was a philosopher that studied happiness. People have always skewed it to being like he was a sex-crazed, pleasure-seeking, weird bearded philosopher. No, he was a very pious man, but he lived very humbly, and he believed in people were more fulfilled when they felt like they belonged to a community. And that has always been, from our influence with Berlin, that has always been Rabotat's influence. And Leonardo da Vinci, old Leo and new Leo, just wanted to show a photo of a...
Sexy Leo.
Yeah, but...
I mean, this sexy Leo.
Yes, the real sexy Leo. He was a Renaissance artist that believed that science and art should come together. So we wanted to incorporate science and art and community into a record label. And in the process of trying to see craftsmen in their art. So we wanted to be fundamentally a record label, but we also wanted to incorporate the craftsmanship of art into the record label. And that was the philosophy of Berlin.
We've kind of become a collective, I guess, if you want to put it in a better way. We really are a record label.
Centered around, it's a record label that's at the center, but around it is
collective.
Is a artist collective. And the dream that I had talked to Alex about in Valencia is I thought, how awesome would it be if everything could be done in-house, where we had this label that everything could be done here together, our promotion, cooking videos, production studio, combining all of these things together to create something really beautiful that most people, especially now, who work as artists, it's a very individualistic world, social media and those kinds of things. Think about it. There aren't a lot of bands anymore. It's Harry Styles. It's this and that. It's one person doing this one thing. And there's a team all around that. But we believe in that idea of it being a community. So after a year, though, of Berlin, we wanted to go back home. It was hard living in Berlin, but just the opportunities weren't right for us to be able to stay there and afford staying there. And we wanted to be closer to our family. For Alex and I think that's why the community aspect of Rabotat is so important, is our family is super important. We'll talk about that a little bit, why we're in New Mexico. But
we made a hop and a skip.
We made a hop and a skip. And we decided it was time to take these philosophies and start figuring out how to develop it in America and develop our own craft.
So even though resources were weird and it was a little bit of a struggle in Berlin, we chose LA, of all places, to find affordability and things to do.
Opportunity.
Really, at the end of the day, it came down to opportunity. And that was super cool because I had, again, never been to LA. Nick had at least visited it, seen it.
A few times. Yeah, I'd been there a few times. And I always knew in the music industry, there's only a few places you can go to. Really 3. Depending on your genre, there's a couple more. There's 3 main places you go to. You go to New York City, the Big Apple. Then you go to LA, the West Coast, or you go to Nashville. And it used to be, Nashville was more of a rock, and it was more of a country scene, obviously, right? Country was the big place there. That was the big genre. So on the West Coast, you had pop, and you kind of like the East and West Coast, that's the places you go to. So we wanted to have a little bit better weather and thaw out from Berlin. From
overcast for months. And
that was our plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back. We're in LA now.
We went to LA.
Did our camera stop break? And we collected our thoughts. We're in LA.
We went to LA. It was wild. I remember driving in and seeing all the palm trees and being like, I feel like I'm in a movie, because again, my point of reference was movies up until that point of the places I was going. And it ended up being an incredible opportunity for us, because really that's where we started to prototype what exactly we were going to do with the record label. And it all really started with this guy right here.
Releasing music.
You would say that, again, Berlin had its influence on us. You'll see later, like, how much of an influence, I guess, really has permeated the whole thing. But it started with this guy here, under his DJ moniker Ironfist, really going fuller on the electronic side. Before, you were doing, I think, a bit more hip hop, and you were a bit more on that range, and then you kind of moved into like melodic techno and house. And
Exactly. And then, now I'm doing this Nicky Mono stuff, and we'll talk about that. And I still am doing Iron Fist, if anyone is worried about that.
No, I don't think anybody's worried about it. Listen,
clamoring for the new Iron Fist.
The thing is about monikers and doing, you almost do want to give yourself separation of, your creative paths. And I think that's something interesting we can talk about a little bit later.
And we want to talk about focus. So when we came back from Berlin, obviously the electronic music, and another reason why I moved to LA, actually, speaking of the electronic music, was LA. There was a video from Resident Advisor that was called Scenes. I can't remember what it was about the different techno scenes around the world. Mm-hmm. It was really awesome, and they were about to come out with the Los Angeles one. They were promoting it super hard. And so Alex and I knew just from the trailer and just by looking it up that there were, and we were talking to people in Berlin that had lived in LA and had been to LA, and DJs that play in LA. So we were knowing that there was a techno scene and an electronic music scene in LA. There is one in New York, but the one in LA was the one that everyone was talking about, and it was a bubbling spot.
Yeah.
So we thought that would be a great way for us to try to work on music in the underground while also trying to find community there and also hone our skills there. The community turned out different than we thought it would. We'll talk about that. It was in a really great way, but the community was different than the way we had originally planned for it, And LA, we started learning how to release music through Iron Fist, but prototyping how to do it. And not only that, but also I'm also learning how to create music like that. So it's an opportunity to kind of like be a critical producer. And when you move to a new city, as a music producer, you always want to be producing music. You should always be producing. You may not actually be sitting there writing and making beats all the time. Some people do, but sometimes you just need inspiration. And that inspiration, sometimes it's just yourself and just writing for yourself. And so I'm like, well, we're going to learn how to release music. Because Alex had worked in an independent electronic record label. And
I've learned how to release music, is all I can say.
Yeah, me too. I never thought I would understand so much about all that nitty-gritty stuff, but it's one of those things where art and science come together through community. That is the whole thing.
We've also taken our time and been really methodical about the way we did all this too, because in doing Iron Fist stuff first and releasing and learning how to do that, we set up our business. We set up all the legalities behind all of the things you would do with a record label. We really did our research to try to make sure that we front loaded all the good stuff. And again, having experience seeing how record labels work, and even in LA, I started getting jobs in music publishing. I was starting to see how that side of things, and even PRO registrations and copyrights, how all that affects what we do.
That's actually a really good point, because Alex and I both, I settled into the creative side and trying to learn as much about A&R, music production, audio engineering, mastering, even I taught music lessons. So a lot of the psychology that goes into some of those things with vocal production and music production, I would learn teaching students of all different kinds of ages. And Alex was learning the back end things, how people get paid, how you're supposed to set up music so people can get paid, how you're supposed to do it so the label can run functionally, versus some other labels that she can't talk about, that she has seen throughout her entire career that aren't necessarily super organized.
Yeah.
And we would see what not to do through her thing, and I would prototype through trial and error through my thing. and still try to meet people and develop a community. It was a big thing, trying to figure all this stuff out.
It was a big one.
And try to become craftsmen in what we're doing with Rabotat. So, to recap, Valencia, it's how we met. It's the foundation of the idea of Rabotat and us wanting to work together. Berlin was discovering a love for electronic music and real art and the philosophy of art, science, community. Then LA was, we have the philosophy, but now we need to learn how to execute this. And we need to refine what we're making. And for me as an artist, it was how to carry that while we're trying to live in a big city that is very expensive. And the hustle culture is super real out there. And that's kind of where Rabotat started, through Ironfist Music, a publishing entity, right? Is our publishing?
No, it's
It's
actually
our LLC.
It's our actual LLC.
Yeah.
It's Ironfist Music. So yeah, started releasing Nick's music. We did a couple EPs, tested the waters, knew that it was something we were interested in, started telling people a little bit more about what we were trying to do, how we were thinking about starting a record label.
But not recruiting anyone.
No. And that's what became interesting. So kind of before we kick off our official timeline, our yearly retrospective of our 5-year, Florian, my Secret Playground, actually at one point reached out to us. He saw that we were releasing music for Nick. He was interested in figuring out what we wanted to do, what we were planning on doing. And he had an album that he had been in the works with that he wanted to release. It's actually Sounds of a Decade.
It's one of my favorite things that any of my friends have ever released.
Yeah, it is an honor that got to be the first LP release on the label.
I was shocking. I was like, why?
But
When he did it originally, I was like, why? Like, this guy doesn't need us.
No.
You know, like, and it felt like at the time, because he's so active in Berlin, he was so much better than us. And it was like, why trust us to do it? But he did. And we worked really hard on that release.
Yeah.
Everything. There's a lot of things that go into all this stuff, all this content creation and trying to get all these splits set up and agreements signed and contracts, having to work with lawyers, all this nitty gritty stuff. He was also someone that I really cared about his music, and we wanted to
do it right.
do him right.
Well, yeah. So this happened before we even technically started the label. And then 2018 rolled around. We decided we were going to shift gears. And because we had these conversations with Florian, we wanted to actually kick off our label. So it started in a park. We were reading a book called We. It's a Russian book.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And there was a preamble in that book that actually mentioned this word Rabota in Russian, and it relates to the working class. It's like a worker's. It's for the worker. We took that, and we were like, that's a really cool. Can we make it Rabotat and make that the record label name? Kind of for the people.
We were playing with like all these different ideas of like names, right? Like we're like, I kind of want it to be
forever.
like the Craftsman label, and it's like, well, we don't really want to make it like just a man label. And then we were like, well, craft, well, that sounds kind of stupid, it sounds like a macaroni. And so it's like trying to go, yeah, but not
Delish.
Yeah.
I know, we're not trying to
Get sued either.
bring cheesy pasta to mind when people think of our label.
So we wanted to try to find something, and one of the reasons why we were reading that book was also the political and social climate at the time of 2018.
18. Well, I think we started reading it in 2017.
2017.
So about 2018 is when we started to.
It's like the year of Mr. Coming into office, and
Orange face.
so we're like, oh, and so it just felt very bleak at the time, and we were also kind of homesick for Europe, especially while all that stuff is happening as well. And a lot of that stuff fueled our fire in wanting to create something that was against the grain of a world that just seemed to have gone completely crazy. And we knew we had this community, we had this philosophy, and now we had a name. Rabotat Records.
We went running with it, and technically why our birthday is July 7th is it's technically the day that we had our first event in Los Angeles. So with this, we will kick off the official retrospective of Rabotat Records. What you just got was all the setup.
It was a preamble. She's going to edit this way down. Trust me, if however long this is, it was a lot longer.
You think I'm going to edit this down. This might be all in here. You don't know anything.
None of this is scripted. And we just wanted to talk. Why not?
It's worth it to talk about. It's crazy because it's our 5-year anniversary of Rabotat, but technically our 10 years of knowing each other, having met, and when we started dating.
Yeah, 10 years. And also, we had done Rabotat now. It would be our 7th year as Ironfist.
Yeah.
So not Rabotat, sorry, Ironfist.
Yeah.
So that would be 7 years of releasing music, learning how the music industry works. It's basically, Ironfist music is about like a year after we really kind of went out on our own past school. Like we had another year of like a broad study and like processing and figuring things out. So it was really like our master was really 2 years long. It was Valencia and Berlin.
And Berlin.
But then LA is where all this starts. And now we're going to talk about the release show. So we probably should pause the camera again because I don't know how long we've been talking.
Can't
pause
be too sure. Can't be too sure.
We're lifting the veil on this episode.
Can't be too sure. We like this.
So we're back. This is, again, veil.
Yeah. So year 1, 2018, July. Technically, we had already played around with the Rabotat thing and released an EP, I think like a little bit before that.
To release the music, but the release party, private event, show, our foray into trying to learn how to do live shows in with this philosophy in mind, was July 7th,
Yep.
2018.
It was a freak day in LA.
First, let's do a little bit of a setup. So let me paint a picture for you of how the event it was supposed to go, which for the most part it did. It didn't go bad.
Yeah.
But there
was
was
great.
one huge hiccup that happened that it was an act of God. What do they call that?
Force majeure.
Force majeure.
Is a fun word.
It was a force majeure, which is a real legal term that happens. And it was crazy. And it wasn't really a bad sign, but it was definitely a sign that it was like, you have your work cut out for you if you want to still do this. So we released this EP. It's Reanimator, one of my top songs and her top songs still to this day. Really fun. Then the second song on that was called Sin with 2 N's. Very techno, kind of industrial techno, lo-fi techno sounds, where we sampled our dryer.
We did. Our dryer made a terrible noise in Glendale, and
we sampled it, made a track, literally then mastered it and released it, and did a release show. And leading up to that, knowing we were going to get Rabotat started and everything, I wanted to incorporate food. The philosophy for Rabotat, or at least the pillars for Rabotat, is food, film, music. Music's the big pillar, but these other two we really wanted to incorporate. So food. I started studying pizza doughs, making pizza. My mom had given me a Chris Bianco, his cookbook, which was an incredible read. And it really inspired me to want to learn how to make pizza because it seemed like it would be the easiest thing. Going to college in Boston, there is pizza everywhere. The East Coast is full of pizza joints. And her being out there, she obviously grew up with that too and spent a lot of time with that. She spent her whole life doing that. And Boston had pizza. So we're doing that. And I'm going to learn how to make it. And we're going to prototype it. So when we have a release show for Rabotat, we can incorporate food. And we're going to incorporate film. How are we going to incorporate film? I'm not a filmmaker, nor do I have the money, or to be honest with you, the time to write, direct, and film some kind of project. So how do we do this? How do we keep it underground? How do we craft something interesting that is ultimately going to go to this really fun release night that also is going to be kind of the definition of how this label is going to go forward?
It became the birth of Rabotat Recuts.
Rabotat Recuts. What are Rabotat Recuts? Because you have helped me on 3.
Oh my God, yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, Rabotat Recuts are what Nick is saying, a really cool way to incorporate film in a way that we can do it. With our knowledge base of public domain film, we knew that we could technically take a public domain film and
chop it up,
repurpose it, chop it up, however you want to do it. Take that film and cut it to essentially a DJ mix. You could technically do it to a musical performance. However you see the vision of how a recut would look for you, and it also would make sense that it would match with whatever movie you're picking. So the first recut would end up being the movie Vampire that came out in 1932, I believe.
1932.
It's a German film. Incredible, very, very cool vampire movie. And Nick ended up taking that and doing a DJ mix on top of it.
I cut about 15 minutes out. Things that's the thing too, is when you take these films, one of the things that came up to me for wanting to create a Rabotat recut and coming up with the name Rabotat Recut was really, I had this film. I thought it was really cool. It was German expressionist, not nearly as stylized, and it's made by a Danish guy. But it was in a really cool movie. It was like this really cool vampire movie, obviously, but pacing could be a little slow for a semi-silent film.
Yeah.
So cut about 15 minutes out of it. Also made it about an hour long, and was like, cool. Now I can take this film and I can try to score it with electronic music, my own music, as well as other artists' music. So it's also another way to produce something that I thought was really interesting and innovative. And that she believed in too, that also kept costs down. That kind of goes into the public domain thing, as well as the budget, finding
affordability of all of it.
And there's also so many different types of public domain films, so there's literally a gold mine, and we still have more that we want to do. I talk every artist that I ever bring on to Rabotat when I'm talking to them about things. We're having our meeting, the first meeting.
Do you want to?
I always talk about that for a release because I believe that it's something really cool, and it also fits the Rabotat mythos super well.
Yeah, and it's also a cool way to show off everybody's personality. So, yeah, we have one for Ironfist. That was the first one that came out. We also have released ones for Flipknob, an incredible DJ out of India that we love and adore.
His is my favorite.
Yeah,
yours is great, but his is. Whew.
Listen, you can't say you just prefaced mine with nothing can top it. Faust was me.
One of the greatest films of all time.
Faust, and then Nicky Manos did Tombstone Canyon, which was very fun. But again, kind of showing off different styles of people, what their interests were. So back to all this, again, and these are two huge things that would lead up to the day that we would do the Rabotat show. The release of the EP that we would put out that was already electronic music, and then the creation of the Rabotat Recut. Because for our show, we decided the way we were going to structure it is we were going to show our Rabotat Recut. Then Ironfist, Nick here, was going to perform a set. And while this was going on, we were going to sell pizza. We sell brownies and biscochitos. We sold these little cookies that we packaged up and we sold. And we just kind of partied and hung out. We ended up doing a giveaway during the night. So it was very informal, very fun, and something kind of easy.
And that was the format. And that format stayed the same.
It did, with a few changes.
Couple of little hiccups. The biggest one, though, is... Okay, so I asked Jay, my best friend and heterosexual life mate, to...
wow, honesty is the key here.
Exactly. I asked Jay, to help me with this. I need to cook a bunch of pizzas for an event. I need to create pizzas for an event. Help me try to figure this out. So he comes from Las Vegas, right? He's living in Vegas at the time. He was living in Las Vegas at the time. He comes and visits, and we start making dough and 20 pizzas in our apartment. And our oven stops working.
Well, it was all going great until we got like 2 pizzas in. And have you mentioned the fact yet? Okay, so this force majeure thing that Nick was talking about earlier, it was 107 degrees in Los Angeles that day. It was a freak heat wave that just happened to land on the day we decided to do our cute little event.
But the whole week was hot like that.
It was hot, but that was the day where it was like catastrophically hot. And then not only that, our oven was being heated up at 500
degrees
for hours to make pizza, and then it crapped out. So going back to, again, homie Jeremy Carrion, who hooked us up with our ring light that we use now for all of our production. I texted him, I'm like, please, for the love of God, can I come to your place in Koreatown and use your oven? And he's like, totally, except that I only have a wall air conditioner and that thing is not working at capacity. So me and him proceed for the next few hours getting ready for this event to like make pizza, jump around to the pool, try to keep cool. It was a nightmare. But we would end up having the show later. It turned out to be a really small gathering, I think, because the heat did us no favors.
Yeah, we had 300 people RSVP'd to come, and we probably had like 75, 100 people. So it was fine. And and then, that happens a lot in LA too, where people RSVP and they just don't show up. But the heat was unbelievable,
Yeah.
and LA doesn't get that hot normally. And then with the pavement, it probably made it like 115 degrees, being like in the city. And we were like in not Chinatown, we were downtown. We were in downtown LA, so very hot, very, very, very hot.
But it was super fun because it was very, again, if you want to go back to guerrilla style, it was the super, like the most guerrilla. We had all of our friends
helping.
Jay.
And family. My mom came. She helped us get money for the cash register. Another thing we didn't think about.
Oh, just all sorts of things. Again, you're figuring all this out on the lam, and it's pretty wild when you actually...
Yeah. And shout out to Jeremy again, because Jeremy, we met in Valencia, Spain. We studied with him in Valencia, and he's been a ride or die ever since. We've lived in the same cities together, we've moved apart from each other, and we're still really close. And I love that guy, and he really saved our ass that day, because he was so close to the venue that it made it easy to pack up all these pizzas and try to figure all this out.
Yeah, and shout out to Jaime for helping us, or Jay for helping us put it together, because we had pizza for days. And that was pretty awesome too.
Definitely. We sold about half our pizza, and we made a decent amount of money back because it was a donation only and our costs and stuff. But
regardless, it was fun. It felt like we needed to do something just to like officially capstone the beginning of Rabotat. And so even though we had done a few things and had conversations with people and whatever, to actually have a show where we're like, this is the thing we're going to do, we're committing, and this is it, here we are, our coming out party. It was just
the coming out party,
the unleashing of the label.
Beast. Yeah, the beast.
Of the beast.
In the best way possible.
Yeah.
And so now we're going to talk a little bit about, after that, what our first few releases as an official label, starting with Florian, the Sounds of a Decade, which we've talked about, but post Flow, what we did.
Yeah, well, Florian was really 2018. It was like we had the show, then we had this big LP release, the first one on the label, since you and me had done an EP before that. But then you had started to conceptualize a project that I think you'll talk a little bit more about. And in the process of doing the conceptualization, you realized you wanted to get a few more people involved in the project. And that's where we would get our next artist on the record label, Just Whiskey, to get involved. And that came about through your Bronze Age albums, I think, that you had created.
Yes, I can talk about that a little bit. So, okay, the Bronze Age was this idea I have. I have an idea to do an Iron Age. I just haven't made it yet because I'm waiting for the right time. So I wanted to use Bronze Age as a way to kind of prototype what the hell I'm going to do and how I'm going to do this. And this really was going to also be the foundation on kind of how to release music what we thought would be the right way through Rabotat. And it's still basically the way that we do it now, with just a couple little tweaks. So Just Whiskey. Dave Austin and Emily Kidd I knew from Berkeley, Boston. Dave was my dear friend, and still is my dear friend, and roommate. And we lived together, lived through some really crazy times, and I always thought he was such a talented songwriter and guitarist. At the time, he was living and playing with Emily Kidd, an amazing singer, and when I met her in Berkeley, Boston, she wasn't really singing. She was helping out with the business side with Dave. And
wasn't she actually? She was a music business major, wasn't she?
She's a music business major,
yeah.
And she started doing booking with Dave, and eventually starting to sing with Dave. And they decided to move to Nashville, Tennessee. And I still think that's one of the best things they could have done, because they're
for both of them.
For them, I mean, like we talked about the different cities that you moved to. Dave was a rock guy, but he also loved country. It's like his heart and soul. So it was a really good move for him. And Emily, she grew up with traditional country and she loves traditional country. So that was the best place for them to go to. And also a change of pace from living on the East Coast. I think as an artist, you got to see and experience new things as much as possible. And I think a lot of the greatest artists are drifters kind of by nature. And so, kind of shows a little bit about that, especially with them. So they're playing in this band called Just Whiskey. And they've been in Nashville probably about a year or two at the time. And I had a little bit of money that I could spend on trying to record a song or two. And I immediately thought of Dave. This band, though, I'm doing electronic music and techno. And this band is a country band.
In Nashville.
In Nashville. But at the time, doing underground techno music. And country, and this isn't mainstream country that they were doing. They were doing
like outlaw
country, and they're still trying to find their footing and their voice, but they're trying to go against the grain as well. It seemed at the time, it's like, okay, we have this electronic thing, but we don't. She's a rocker by nature. I'm a hip-hop DJ who's done techno, and I've played in symphony orchestras, and I love jazz. I'm a huge variety of stuff, and now both of our tastes have grown to love all different kinds of music, from world and reggae and all kinds of things. And we knew that eventually we were going to need to make a jump to do other things, and I thought it would be good to just dive in and do that, and experiment what it would be like to work with a band. And not just a band, but a band of people that I trusted, and a band that I wanted to build a community with, that I strongly believed could do incredible things. So I pulled out a bunch of public domain folk songs. A bunch of public domain folk songs. I went to the library in Glendale, which had an amazing library of songbooks.
That's a really nice library. Just if you are a creative person at all.
It's like
art and stuff.
It's like an Armenian palace.
Yeah, it is.
Gorgeous.
Literally.
And I'd spend hours in there, and if I found a bunch of books and I scan out a bunch of pages, I picked like 25 public domain traditional folk songs where there is no writer. So, okay, how are we going to do this? I give them a list of 25 songs. They picked 2 songs. One was a song called "O Death." It's in "O Brother, Where Art Thou?" But I don't think Dave and Emily knew that when they picked it. You know, it's just I gave them sheet music, and I was like, look at these songs, look at these chords, try to play through a couple, see which ones work. I gave them some weird ones. I had found one that was like about Lincoln, that I was like, oh, we could rewrite it, you know, or whatever. And Dave's like, you're crazy, I'm sure.
Please don't do this to me.
But then the other one, which honestly isn't one of my top played songs, but it's, I think, one of the greatest things we've ever released, is Cocaine Lil. Cocaine Lil was like a New Orleans, like I think it's the origin of Minnie the Moocher. It's like Minnie the Moocher spawned out of this song, and again, it was just like kind of this like forgotten public domain thing that we could work with, and normally it's this up tempo fun thing, and they took it and made it a ballad talking about some very real stuff, and those were the 2 things that I used as the basis to create my album. And by doing that, what I did was record this band in a very minimal mic setup. I was very particular about the stuff I wanted to make it sound traditional, and
went to Nashville to do it.
Went to a studio and actually recorded there, and that studio was in the house they're living in with their own artist community. So it was a good environment to do this type of project and to work on this project. Shout out to Derek, the bass player. He stayed in the studio basically the entire time, even after his session time was up, and he didn't even need to be there anymore.
Oh my God.
And he just wanted to be there and be part of the group, and that was a really cool thing to kind of see the community that you could build in Nashville, and also the community that you could build in country. As someone that I grew up with country, living out in New Mexico, but it's not something that my mind space was in at all when we made it, but I wanted to do my best to make the best country, rock, roots, record I could make. So we do that. I take those songs, all the different parts and everything, mix it myself, and release all of that. But then I took all those different individual elements and used them to make my Bronze Age electronic album. So if you listen to Bronze Age, every snare drum hit, every bass line, every single thing, except for a couple little synths here and there, and a couple of little samples from my high school bands with Jay, the guitarist, and Quaid, my brother. I sampled all these things and made an album using other people's music and using samples.
Yeah.
So trying to kind of create something different, something artistic, try to craft something from this community, art, science community. So that's how the Bronze Age was invented. So here's the process on how we released music. In order to keep things constantly going, we released Gray. It's like the prequel. It's where "O Death" and "Cocaine Lil" are on. And I also am using some of the music from one of my favorite horror films, Martin, George A. Romero film. Getting to meet Donald Rubinstein and actually licensing his music, a test in learning how to license music and do some businessy kind of things. Alex had a fun time trying to figure all that out.
I love, shout out to Donald Rubinstein, because that
guy... If you ever watch this, man.
incredible composer, incredible artist. He's still in New Mexico doing the thing, and he was so kind to even give us the opportunity. I mean, the nice thing is learning that you just sometimes have to ask. It doesn't hurt.
Everything's a prototype. Like, it may be a little confusing as we discuss this, but that's the whole thing, is like, as we figuring it out, we're trying to propel a career forward while also prototyping an idea and a philosophy. And that's sometimes a very difficult thing to try to convey and clearly express to people and motivate people with. Because really, at the end of the day, unfortunately, money talks, especially in the music industry, where there isn't a lot of money to be had by the smaller people.
Yeah.
So make this record. We put out Cocaine Lil and Oh Death.
Well, wait, we should take a little step here, because we should give a quick shout out to Scott Van Orden, who we would meet throughout the process of working with Just Whiskey on putting out.
Who do the artwork.
Exactly. So we basically took these 2 songs that Just Whiskey recorded, and while Nick was working on the Bronze Age stuff, we released them separately, making them effectively the 3rd artist on the record label. Super, super cool. In the process of them getting this EP together, we were like, well, what do you want to do about the artwork? And they were like, well, we have this really awesome guy named Scott who we've worked with before, and we would like to bring on to do the artwork. So the reason I had to stop and do this is because Scott he's the first artist who really joined. Yeah. We'll talk more about these shirts in a little bit, but this is a Scott Van Orden exclusive. This will be available on the Rabotat Records shop soon. But
he's been a ride or die, basically.
Since the beginning.
Since the beginning. I mean, we had Florian, where he did his own artwork. He had all of that stuff done. But basically, from the moment we needed artwork, and we needed to find someone, we were recommended through Dave and Emily to use Scott. And Scott works fast. He's super enthusiastic. He's super supportive, and we support him in everything that he does as well. And I feel like he really does understand what we're trying to do with Rabotat, and I feel like he's kind of always been down to work with us.
Well, he's eclectic too. Okay, there is a running through line with everybody who's worked with us. There is this eclectic element that each person has where they're cut from a different cloth. It's just, I mean, even looking at this design, I mean, the designs that we are wearing today are revisions they're kind of reimaginings.
Of the original logo.
Of the original logo, the Rabotat logo. And it just, a lot of the stuff that Scott's putting out felt like it was in the same vein of the things that we were interested in. And he has continued throughout the past 5 years to be a cornerstone of the label, at least graphic design wise.
Visually,
but even he's been on our circuitry streams. He's an incredible guy. So shout out to Scott. Just had to give a little shout out.
Love
because
you, man. Thank you.
He's the first artist that truly joined outside of the musical artist. He's the first one who has kind of taken a leap of faith with us, and we adore him. He is the face, really, of a lot of the Rabotat stuff you're seeing constantly. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so
so we work with him. He releases secondhand songs. I release Gray, which I designed that artwork myself. And Bronze Age, I do that artwork myself. But then the third thing, again, bringing in community and also bringing more of that electronic influence in. It's like kind of a little deviation to kind of see how people would respond to some other types of music, and then go back to electronic music. I did a remix EP of Gray and Bronze Age, working with some people that I knew in Berlin, Florian and Zaped, from who now lives in Australia. But I asked Alex to produce something, because at the time we're doing all of this, she wants to produce as well. We're learning all this music business stuff, and she's doing all this back end learning, but she also is a creative at heart as well. And so she's creating music as well. So I create this EP where other people are remixing songs that I've already remixed, essentially, like sampling songs. Like I recorded songs, sampled those songs to make new songs, and then 3 other people made remixes of those songs. So that was kind of the way to kind of try to branch out and develop a community and just kind of figure out what's working and what's not working, and get some new perspective on some different types of music. So that album artwork was designed by Scott as an interpretation of my 2 previous artworks. And it was really awesome. And leading up to that, once all that was done, we go into the Just Whiskey release show.
So yeah, we ended up doing a release show for the Just Whiskey Secondhand Songs release because, again, the show before that had been our LA one, which had gone so awesome that we decided we wanted to take another stab at live performances.
What do they call that? Something for punishment?
A glutton for punishment.
Glutton
Yeah,
for punishment.
you're going to find out through the course of this. We are definitely gluttons for punishment. But again, half of the fun is just seeing what you can do and get away with. And the Just Whiskey show was a blast. We ended up
one of my favorite concerts of all time.
We flew out Jay and his fiance Crystal. They joined us, did all the food. We did a special meal.
We were somehow able to convince a bar in Nashville.
Not just a bar, Belcourt Taps, which if you know, they had a bit of a standing in Nashville.
They did. It was a really great location, good venue, and we somehow convinced the owner to let us cook in their venue, bring in a chef.
Bring in CBD so that we could do a special cocktail.
Yep.
Which is great.
Which, sold really well, surprisingly.
Again, your mom showed up, flew out to Nashville to come to the show.
And Jolie.
Yeah, and our the Rabotat Executive Board, Jolie and Amy. Shout out to you too.
Yeah, my family's always been really supportive. Same with your family, but my mom definitely came out to that show with her friend, and it was really fun, but
it was fun.
Incredibly stressful.
But good learning experience because that tested our limits because our LA show we did not push our capacity even remotely near where we could have. Where Nashville, it was like a full house. We were working with a lot of different people. We were selling merch. We were doing this and that. It was
we were selling merchandise, selling food, taking a profit of the food, selling CBD, taking a profit off of that, taking a profit off this, off of that. And I think we sold like $5,000 worth of alcohol that night. So it really went off.
Good. Yeah, it was a big amount, but it was a lot of fun. We sold a lot of food.
It's a crazy night.
It was a lot of fun. So we did that, and that was wild. We ended up coming back to LA, settling for a while.
Yeah, energized but ready to take a break and figure out the next step.
Well, we were working on the Release a Year stuff, and then at the end of 2019, we had an interesting opportunity come up. It actually probably started really at the beginning of 2019. I would say this would probably, maybe even like the spring.
And it really starts with something we're going to talk about a little bit with this community is basically how you function in society. Like that's how you get opportunities. Through relationships. And some people really abuse that, or it's like fake relationships, and they talk about that all the time, but it doesn't matter if it's the music industry or the food industry or
every industry is like this.
Every industry. And we meet this wonderful person named Wari in Valencia, Spain, studied with Alex and Jeremy.
Yeah, I gotta say, no offense, I gotta get a little credit for this because he technically was my friend first.
He was, both of them were. We wouldn't have been able to do it without you.
Wari is hands down one of the weirdest, coolest, best people I've ever known in my life. I literally meet this guy and he starts telling me about how he would do these like ghost investigations. He is from India and he was telling me this, like that he had a background in this. And as somebody, again, if you've watched our prior podcast this past month where we talked about the Fangoria Chainsaw Wars, you're going to know by my little preamble bit in there, we watch a lot of ghost hunting stuff. It's just something I've always been into. I don't know. Wari literally telling me that, I'm like, I think you're my person. I think you're definitely one of my people, and you're going to be a friend of mine for life.
Yeah.
We become friends in Valencia, and then years come to 2019. We get to 2019. He had interned in LA. We actually got to see him a bit in LA when he was...
We used to hang out with him like every week.
Yeah, he worked in LA for a while, so... There was a time period where we were seeing him quite a bit. It was awesome.
And he moves away.
He had to go back to India once his visa ran out. Mm-hmm. But we get this opportunity. He comes to the States in 2019. I have no idea what month he ended up coming. And we go and meet him for drinks and I think like dinner or something. And he's like making a comment to me about how he would love to get us out to India to perform and do like a tour.
And we're like at a bar, and it's like, well, whatever, man. Like, sure, but I mean, you hear a lot of that in the music industry. Like, no offense to Wari at all, because I've met lots of people that say the exact same thing that he says, and, they don't follow through at
Wari
all.
proved us wrong.
Totally did.
And that's the thing that I'm like forever indebted to him, because he is a man who, at the end of the day, gets results. and he makes things happen. And he's a dreamer, but he's also an actualist. So he knows how to get it done.
And he changed my life.
He changed all of our lives.
Us going to India was one of the most like pivotal thing since, you know, LA was big and it was more of a foundation, but it really is like after Berlin, being able to go to India and experience that was a life-changing experience. And being able to do what we did, we're working for I'm supporting Katy Perry and Dua Lipa to promote these concerts, promote the first time Katy Perry's ever in India, and we're performing in these clubs all around in the major cities, Delhi and Mumbai and Bangalore. And I'm able to go to Goa, a place I've always wanted to go to, a haven for electronic music, and this type of spirituality and community that I really admire and love and have a deep passion for. And Wari made all of that happen for all of us. I mean, Alex wasn't even performing, and he let her come out as well because we were able to work for OnePlus, and they were able to foot the bill.
We have this conversation at this dinner one night, and he's like, "You guys should come out to India and do a tour." And we were like, "That is so cool. If you could make that happen, that would be crazy." And sure enough, OnePlus is the one who hosted all of the events. It was through exactly what Nick's talking about. They ended up being all of the like opener performances leading up to Katy Perry and Dua Lipa coming over to India. It was super crazy. Without getting into too much detail, because we could probably talk about that just in and of itself.
That's its own podcast.
But
we brought Florian.
We brought Florian, which again was a blast. That ended up having, oh God, the stories of what we did. Again, he is somebody, a wild guy. You have to spend time with Florian. If you ever get any opportunity to spend time with someone, it's Florian. Just to do a tour with him, and again, to get his worldview in that kind of close setting when you're touring with somebody. It was so much fun.
We loved it, and it was super great. I know he had a wonderful time too.
And we also made really good friends.
Relationships with people.
Yeah, shout out to Pranay. He was our
Love you, Pranay.
He was basically our manager while we were out there. He got everything handled, and not only that, gave us the most intimate, in-depth tour of like how to see the cities that we were in, made sure we were taken care of. He was incredible.
He was.
Disco Butte was incredible. We met him through the process of doing this. He performed with us.
Shout out Shiva.
Shiva, you're the man. And he would end up doing more with us when we'd come back to the States, which we'll talk about a little more later.
Flipknob, Om. We meet him. He's the one who did one of the recuts later. He was helping out with some of this stuff and just really like a big fan of Florian and some of my music. And it was really cool to be able to meet these guys and see, again, like the beauty of music and art. Like we're seeing a whole nother culture have the same appreciation for something that we do, and also be fans of what we do and respond really well to what we did. And that was a life-changing experience, and it felt really great. And honestly, after doing the release show with Just Whiskey, releasing the album and the EP, and we're like going to India. And at that time, I was working 3 jobs, so I'm like burning the candle at 3 ends. And Alex is working a full-time job, and we're trying to run this label, trying to figure out what to do next. We have these big plans for LA. It's the end of 2019. And then 2020 happens. Like literally, like the week before lockdowns, we're talking about trying to find venues in LA to have shows. We had some money left over from tour. We can afford to actually like go full throttle, put that pedal down. I'm interviewing for jobs at music schools, and I'm like getting interviews and actually getting my foot in the door, being able to do some really cool stuff. But then lockdown happens, and I got to tell you, that's when a lot of people's momentum, not just ours, really slowed, and everyone goes, what are we going to do next?
Well, I would argue that it only slowed really within that first month or two, for us at least.
It did.
And I'll talk about what. But yeah, it was pretty...
adaptability.
Yeah, it was pretty catastrophic. It was...
a sinking feeling to be like... okay, so what are we going to do? And then realizing that it's going to go on and on and on. And it's like, what are we going to do? And then that money we had saved up, that's got to go to survive in LA. And how are we going to do this? Like how are we going to move forward? And I start thinking, holy shit, live streams are going to be the thing.
Well, when we realized we couldn't leave the apartment anymore and nobody was going to be leaving, they literally, every person, all of our artists across the globe, all these people we knew, all of our friends from India, Florian in Berlin, all of our Nashville homies.
All
literally,
the new India friends.
Yeah, everybody literally was like, oh shit, we're in lockdown. We can't even leave our house.
No one's going anywhere.
We're going nowhere.
No one's doing anything. So regardless of what you think of that pandemic or not, everything kind of goes on hold for a second and has to learn how to become digital. So I ask Alex, I'm like, okay, Coachella has this, when they have their festival, their YouTube channel will have 3 simultaneous live streams, so you could click through the different performances. But if you go and try to go live on YouTube, you can only do it one at a time. So while we're sitting around, I mean, Alex is still working. I'm sitting on my butt, and so I probably should have figured this out. But you figure it out, and I ask you, I go, how can we do this on our Rabotat channel? How can we make a live event where people could click around and it's interactive, because everyone's all bored, so you can just jump around. If you want to catch a rock show, you can go check out the rock channel. If you want to see coloring with Scott, you could go like hang out with him while he does like art, and you could color along with him. Like we had Royston, one of my best friends from Boston.
Leon Fit,
he's doing like exercise. You know, we asked Jay, we're like, hey man, can you like, he's always wanted to do a cooking show, so we're like, look, and his restaurant shut down. So I'm like, look, man, like, can you, do you want to do a video? Like, do you have a camera? You know? And he's like, I have a camera from 2004.
So do it, use it.
We're like, great, use it, record it, we'll make it, we'll put it out.
Yeah.
And so that's the birth of circuitry, was figuring out how to use our circuits to all connect and fire at once. So it's a double play with the technology, but it's also like, you know, it's like power. It's connectivity, you know, we're trying to connect to our community digitally.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best things we ever did.
It is. It's been a long-standing tradition. Now we do it every Halloween, but we've done them when the pandemic ramped up. Yeah, we did 3 like right off the get-go before
every
I think
other
we
month.
did. Yeah. Because we just didn't know either. We were like, you know what? As long as we're in the pandemic, why don't we keep doing this? And they truly all did start out live. So now if you go on our YouTube channel, you're probably going to have a hard time finding the original, because we did do it live. We were able to do different channels simultaneously, except that YouTube would have a copyright issue and pull it down, or it would have some weird thing happen and it would pull it down, or
DJ mixes wouldn't do well, internet wouldn't do well, someone could report it.
All this stuff was happening. And it has since kind of evolved into something where now we do kind of preemptively get things ready. We don't do a complete live stream anymore, just because
we upped the production. It's better video quality, better audio quality.
And now it's a blast. I mean, we've really honed it down and done a lot of really cool and made it really tight now. But it was a lot of prototyping, and it was a lot of fun. And I want to give a quick shout out just to all, because there were so many artists that have been on circuitry. Forgive me if I miss any. Of course, all of our Rabotat artists have been on there. All the people we've previously discussed: Scott, Just Whiskey, My Secret Playground, but we've also had Deliriously Serious, We Are Makers, Drunken Logic, Nick in Ironfist and Nikki Mona's capacity, me in the Madame Defer capacity, Morgan Tucker. We've had so many different people come and do it, but we've also had a number of people who weren't necessarily Rabotat artists.
That's the list.
This is the list. It's pretty wild. This was what I was talking about when this gets crazy. We have Raul Garcia. Shout out to my homie Raul. We love you, dude.
Love you, man. Thank you.
We love everybody on this list. I'm not trying to be biased. I honestly, I probably should stop here.
This is our community.
I should stop here, because if I stop to talk about how much I love every single person on this list, we're going to be here forever. But Raul Garcia has been with us for quite a few shows. We have Audible, Diana, Flipknob, and Disco Butte all coming out of India. Shout out to all 4 of you. You guys are so fucking rock and roll, bringing some of the best electronic music to our streams. It's been awesome to have them on board. I think most of them have actually done a few different shows with us. So it's been really awesome.
All of them have done multiple shows.
Yeah, we have Mad Gavs. Shout out, because Maddie has been with us from the beginning of circuitry all the way till now. Anytime we've ever asked her, she She is so down, and she is like way too cool for us, but we are blessed that she is just in our realm because she's friggin' amazing. And then on that note, we also have Joey G out of LA. Shout out to Joey too. He's running Lots of Practice, which is a really freaking cool label out of LA.
Label. Yeah, definitely.
So you should give them a look. We also have had Dwaria. We've had War 2, Griffin Winton, Sweet Undertow. You were talking about Leon Fit earlier, your homie Royston from India. Yep. We had Fired Figments, which is actually your cousin out of New York.
My cousin out of New York. She does kiln work, like pots and stuff, like in fantasy style. Super cool. And we were like, well, what are you doing? So
come on the stream.
Yeah.
We had Colby R. Woodfield, who's a filmmaker. He's actually a friend of mine from undergrad. So that was super cool to have him involved.
Had a horror movie short.
Yeah,
super cool.
That was super fun. We've also had Jason Erie and Zachariah Red, both out of Nashville, and our homie Pachuco out of LA. We've definitely had it's a crazy when you look at, and if I'm leaving anybody out again, I'm so sorry, but that's the definitive list of people that
and that's the community and the relationships that we built through it at various capacities. Like I worked with Pachuco at Guitar Center in Los Angeles when I first moved there briefly before I quit, and but then I hit him up like 5 years later, and he's like down to do this, and his is like one of the coolest sets ever. It's like like hard up tempo. I love it. It was amazing.
Super fun.
And so that's the community. That was the idea of building the community. But in between the circuitries, a lot of artists aren't making music. The music industry in 2020, like everything else, kind of comes to a standstill. There isn't a lot of new music coming out, and people aren't able to do a lot with their music. So I'm trying to figure out what to do, and we do that first circuitry, and Jay asks us, he goes, I loved doing those videos for circuitry. Can we do a show? Mm-hmm. And we're like, okay.
Sure.
And at the time, his restaurant had closed down that he was working for, and his boss just gave everyone their walk-in freezer, like all their produce, all their meat, everything, because they're closing the restaurant down. So Jay had all this food that he's like, I literally can just make food and film it. And we're like, yeah, let's do it. And he had a very specific idea where he wanted to incorporate Hanna-Barbera sound effects and fun little like breaking of glass and like things like that. And like a comical tone, but still like informative, but also quarantined. So he's going to be drinking because why not? Like what else is he doing? He's just sitting around. So he has this very casual, like loose tone that he's doing. Mm-hmm. And he's wearing all these Golden Knights hats, and something that we've never talked about, which I hope he's not too mad, but if you go back and watch those episodes, he's constantly changing Golden Knights hats throughout to break continuity just to see if anyone will pick up. But ironically, now he works with the Golden Knights and the Silver Knights.
Yeah, so it's kind of maybe he brought it into fruition a little bit, but
yeah,
that was quarantine cooking, and that was really cool because that was kind of the beginning of doing that with Jay. We would end up doing Bun Huggin'. We've done the tasting room, and we've also done Jay Works. So we did a few different series of things with
different
him.
Formats, different styles.
Definitely a wild fun because, yeah, a lot of editing from our end of things, but
we would edit a whole video in a day between the two of us. Mm-hmm. I'd do a rough cut, and then she would chop it up and add all these sound effects and, text and do all of these things. And it's a way for us to be, because as we're doing all of this with Jay, we're like, wow, we really need to learn how to do video production. Like, not just for this, but in the future, we're going to have music videos we're going to need to do. Lyric videos. We're obviously missing lyric videos at this point with Rabotat. We're not using them the way that we should. So we're like, we have these visualizers, but we need to do these things.
Even circuitry. It's helped circuitry. It's helped every production that we've done since those shows has benefited from the fact that we would bust out the Jaime shows, the J shows.
All the prototypes. And he would prototype it with us because he wasn't like a professional celebrity chef. He's just a guy with a camera. We mailed him another camera, so they had two cameras, and we bought him these phone clip mics, so he had a little bit of better audio, and that's it. And so he's figuring all of that out while we're doing all of the back end editing and trying to figure out how to make this show creative and also help someone achieve their vision and keep Rabotat alive.
Yeah, during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Circuitry was doing that, but Jay being involved really brought our YouTube channel to a whole other echelon.
It gave us consistency. We were releasing something every week.
We were.
So phase one of the pandemic is just circuitry and Jay.
Wow. Yeah, it was a wild ride. We were focusing all of our efforts really in there, continuing to build. We did, however many circuitries that first year. I think the year of the pandemic we did 4 circuitries because we did the 3 and then we did Halloween.
And one I got to add, just by the way, before they had testing, so we have no idea. Alex gets a fever and loses her taste. So she probably had COVID, and she had to quarantine for 2 weeks in our apartment, completely separate from me at the time. And we did circuitry while she was in quarantine. She was running it in the sweltering hot, tiny little bedroom apartment, and I'm running my stuff outside in the living room, and I'm sleeping on the couch in the living room. She's sleeping in our bedroom.
It was a nightmare.
And it was really intense. And so we're like learning all of this digital stuff, all of this video editing.
Well, that's also when we were still doing it live, so it was psychotic. There were a few reasons why we've changed our format, but
just to keep it easier.
But that's also the reason it's had longevity too. It's something that we were able to kind of keep up, and ultimately 2020, even though all hell broke loose and the pandemic hit, it became a huge boost to the Rabotat Records channel on YouTube. We ended up renaming it Rabotat Rec, rebranding. Rec for the little recording button on the VHS camera recorders. And so, that was huge for us. Honestly, that in and of itself has been a huge thing since then. And we love circuitry. We've continued to do it ever since.
And that carried us through 2020.
2021 kicks off. And through the process of us doing all these circuitries and still being really, really active and working with different artists during the pandemic, we had a few people who came out of the woodwork and actually reached out to us to start working with us more. So the first one that comes to mind, kind of in the beginning of all this, would have been Jake, Drunken Logic.
Yeah, and we met him right before the shutdown, in February or something. Or January, something like that.
2020?
In 2020, right in the beginning of 2020, we were at a networking event for our college. I went to school with him, and I even taught at a summer program with him at Yale University. We taught together, and he was out in LA, and he's trying to network, and I was like, yeah, cool, man. And then, I'm doing circuitry, and I'm doing all this stuff, and he reaches out to me about wanting to produce a project and working with Rabotat. So I decided to work with him on an EP called It's Only Temporary, where I produced all the songs, and it kind of gave me something to write and something musical that I could do, because I'm mainly doing a lot of stuff for Jay, and we're kind of helping him out and
doing more video production at that point.
Yeah, and then also kind of learning how to produce an artist that isn't music, and trying to learn what would go into that and how we should do that, and video content, and learning how to do all of that. So then it's like, okay, well, here's a creative break for music that you can do in your apartment in lockdown, and we can do everything remotely. So that first album comes out in 2021. It's Only Temporary. One of my favorite things that I've worked on personally, just because it was getting to work on someone else's complete project, but also trying to kind of craft this visual. We're calling it visual painting, sound painting that we were doing with it. So trying to create something, unique and interesting.
Yeah.
But that was our first release of 2021.
Mm-hmm. And then the summertime kind of blew up because at that point we would have Emily Kidd stepped away from Just Whiskey around that time and started doing her own solo stuff. So we would release Emily Kidd's first single, Everybody Fooled But Me, which was huge.
One of our biggest hits on the label.
One of the biggest hits on the label. We would also release a music video for it. It's still one of the biggest videos on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out.
Yeah.
It's a party.
She edited the whole thing.
I did.
Using the techniques we learned from Jay.
Yeah, it was a great video. Still one of the biggest videos on our channel, though, so that's super cool. We had also released music from Deliriously Serious for the first time. They joined us for a circuitry in 2020, and they had been talking about how much they wanted to work with us and how much fun they had during circuitry. And when given the opportunity, they approached us and were like, hey, are you guys interested in releasing music? And we were like, hell yeah.
We'll help you.
We did it.
And I knew Dan when I was living in New Mexico before I went to Boston. I was studying at New Mexico State University, and we were actually neighbors. And he was a vocal major, and I was a music education major. And he told me he was going to move to Sweden. And I was like, cool, man. good luck with that, you know. And I never really thought I would see him again. He ended up becoming really good friends with Jay a couple years later, oddly enough. And so yeah, like when we're trying to find artists for, because we always wanted to change up the circuitry lineup to, you know, get some new people in and just keep building that community. I mean, I kept seeing Deliriously Serious, and Jay kept telling me, man, you should really hit those guys up. Like they're really cool, man. They're New Mexican, so that's something that you should really kind of tie into. And so really, I mean, it was like thanks to Jay that I reached out to them, and then they put on one of the best performances. That first one was so cool.
So cool.
And it was so fun.
They set a bar every time.
They do. Every single one, they just like do better. And that first one though, it was like, wow. And then Luke reached out to me personally at the end of Circuitry and told me how much he liked it and how he was really happy to be a part of it. And we just hit it off from there, start releasing their music videos, and start getting a plan to release the album that just came out this year.
Yeah.
So
finally released their full-length LP in 2023. So if you haven't heard it yet, go check it out. That's been amazing.
So we're planting these seeds for Emily is off on her own, so she's kind of figuring out her own thing. Deliriously Serious is figuring out, you know, how they're going to work with us, and they have this massive amount of songs that they're trying to figure out how to release it. And Jake of Drunken Logic, he's trying to figure out, he wants to create an EP that's a straight ahead garage rock EP, something completely different than what we did from It's Only Temporary, which is electronic influenced with songs he had written years and years and years ago, just as a way to kind of like bring life to these songs and use my production sound and that kind of stuff. And we're like gonna create a new record. So we have these guys, like all these artists, guys and gal, are trying to figure out how to make this this post quarantine jump into releasing music, because a lot of the time we were in pandemic, a lot of these people are calling us and asking for advice, and we're talking more about like almost not like consultation, because we're like, it's friendly talks and friendly conversation, but we're talking about what we're going to do next, and we're talking about how they're going to move forward next. Rabotat has an open door policy, and I always tell the artists, we invest in the artist, not the music. The music is a huge part of it, or their art is a huge part of it, but we're investing in the artist. So it's like with Emily, she's trying to figure out how to go solo, how to have a strategy in order to continue to play live, and in order to become successful doing that while releasing music.
Yeah.
So we're figuring that out. How are we going to do that? I got a puppy here. We have our dog in and out, Mesa.
It's okay. I know she needed to get some scrubs.
She did.
This is a good opportunity, though. I want to pivot, because we had 2 more artists that we would start releasing music for in 2021. But what also came about in 2021, since we are here today, is Rabotat Radio also started. In scheming with artists, and I mean, honestly, Circuitry, all the things that we were doing with streaming and our YouTube channel, we were figuring out ways to continue pushing forward while we were still stuck in place. And
benefiting the artist.
Yeah. And so for us, that's why the Circuitry performances and all the live streams we did were so important. Rabotat Radio began, the first episode was actually Jay interviewing Jake about It's Only Temporary, talking about the EP as a way of continuing the conversation around the content and this awesome music we were creating. So there were a few things that really became birthed through the process of the pandemic that were cool. In the process of all this, we are releasing music from Jake, Deliriously Serious, Emily. We do a couple remixes and covers that summer, but then ultimately we start looking at Nick as he makes the transition from his Ironfist stuff that he was solely making into the Nicky Manos character that you started.
But that also kind of just shows like how the label starts to fill out. So we originally start out and it's just electronic. We make this kind of huge right turn into like alt country and like outlaw country, Americana music. And then we start filling it in with some rock and some different types of electronic music. Like Madame de Fer, Alice's moniker, she does like industrial, like lo-fi, kind of like horror techno. Very different than like the kind of electronic music myself or Florian's making. And then we start working with Deliriously Serious, and they're incorporating Latin elements and hip hop and dub and reggae. So we're starting to kind of like just get this huge palette of flavors of different artists. And around that time, I had told myself, I play a bunch of different instruments. I mean, like everything back here is just a few of the instruments that I play. I have like a saxophone over here and a guitar and a bass, flute, Like I got all this stuff back here. Drums.
Everything.
Yeah, drums right here where Iggy's at.
Just
And so we've got all this stuff, right? And I'm like, I would give all that up if I could just sing. Ha ha ha, I can't sing. Because everyone would always ask me, hey, do you sing? And I go, no, I wish I could, but I just can't. I always would make that joke where I wish I could sing, but I can't. Well, over the pandemic, I'm playing guitar a lot, and I'm kind of not really listening to a lot of electronic music just because, I mean, I'm listening to some. I always listen to electronic music, but I'm starting to kind of like listen to things that are a little bit easier to listen to at home. And maybe it was because of like the world was so intense. I just wanted to listen to something a little older. So I'm listening to like Buck Owens and like
Marty Robbins.
Marty Robbins. And I'm like kind of rediscovering kind of this love for like New Mexico, which was something when I left New Mexico, I couldn't wait to leave. And I'm kind of like rediscovering this love for like the Southwest and the music of country and Western music. And I'll probably also working with, you know, Just Whiskey and Emily and Dave and all that stuff. So I start going like, I don't want to start learning how to sing. I think that's a pretty stupid excuse to just say, oh, I'd give up all my instruments if I could just sing. And it's like, what else are you doing? Like, you don't have much else going on really right now. Like, when else am I going to have time in my career to like focus on developing my artistic skills at this point? Because I have plenty of stuff to do with Rabotat, but how am I getting better as a musician and a music producer and an engineer? Like at a certain point I felt like I was kind of reaching what I could do with electronic music, and I wanted to see what else I could do. Nicky Manos again is another prototype of when it comes to me and Alex in this community, we have the most control over that, you know? Like I can set these deadlines for my songs to come out, and I can prototype how these things are going to work. And I can say, hey, I'm going to try this social media campaign and I'm going to prototype it based off of this research. And then I'm going to work with it through Nicky Manos and see how it actually does. And then if anything is successful, when I talk to different artists, if I talk to Emily or I talk to Jake or Dan of Deliriously Serious, I can give them proven advice as to what actually is working and what's not working, and at least things that will help them better their career in a practical way. So a lot of the music that I release and the way that I kind of approach my music is usually in service of Rabotat. It's in service of me and my personal journey, but it's always in service of how can we have practical information to make these artists' career better. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's Nicky Manos, and that was the next step, was figuring out how to do that.
Yeah.
And how to have a little bit more control about what we're releasing, have a little bit of control about how to prototype, you know, see what's working, what's not working, mm-hmm. and apply it to the new artists that we have. Because now all of a sudden we went from just one artist that we were worried about. We really hope we do them right. We got these other artists that we really want to do them and their art correctly. Mm-hmm. And we also want to stick to our philosophy of art, science, community, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where we're at. That's 2021.
Oh, we're not even done yet. You think we're done? We have 2 more people that we brought onto the label.
Yes.
Or not even, technically 3 more people we brought on the label.
Yeah, go ahead and tell them.
First,
yes,
Mr. Morgan Tucker, who
crazy cool.
He would get worked into Nicky Manos, but he himself has performed as Glitch Witch and as himself on Circuitry. Mm-hmm. He saw, basically, I'm from Maine, and there was one day where we were visiting, and I had left a Rabotat sticker at a ice cream parlor that I really like in my hometown.
Our first time traveling together since the pandemic. It was like 2021, mm-hmm. and we're like, well, we'll
go to Maine. We'll go see my folks. So we leave a sticker at this ice cream parlor that we stop at, and Morgan came across it, and I get an email like a couple days later, and this person is like, hey, I saw this sticker and I just felt like I needed to reach out. It was super fortuitous because he's like, I'm from New Mexico but living in Maine, which was weird because Nick is from New Mexico and I'm from Maine. We were like, wow, weirdly connected to both of our cultures and our worlds. And he was like, I really like what you're doing and I wanted to reach out. And honestly, that email has set the course for an incredible connection, an incredible relationship with an incredible artist. He in his own right, he's doing some really, really cool stuff with graphic design. If you guys haven't yet, I would recommend you go to the Rabotat web shop and take a look at his designs.
I was wearing his shirt last podcast.
Yeah, if you go to the Fangoria 2023 show, you'll be able to see his design for the 5-year on that episode.
And if you look at Rebels Twilight, my Nicky Manos album, it's a concept album. The artwork is him. He painted it on separate canvases, and we put it together and made this collage art of this beautiful sunset that I asked him to paint, a New Mexican sunset from memory.
And he did a great job.
Yeah, because he's out in Maine.
Yeah.
So we got that, and he's one of my favorite collaborations. We actually met up with him a year later and ended up getting some food with him. And at first I was like, oh my God, is he gonna be some crazy guy? We don't know this guy. Like, what the hell? And he was one of the best hangs I've ever had.
He's so dope.
I loved hanging out with him, and he was so cool.
So kindred, and like, yeah, you know when you know. I mean, we had another meeting with another, again, the next people we'll talk about, it was kind of a similar meeting situation. But you know when you know, and with Morgan, we knew the minute we met him. He also has an exclusive line that's on our shop right now of state birds. You can get your New Mexico Roadrunner, or you can get your Maine chickadee. So yeah, shout out to Morgan. That was a really, really cool connection.
So 2 artists now, like actual graphic artists that can help make artwork for the thing, that for people's artwork, for people's pack shots, people's shirts and merchandise. So we're starting to kind of build that out. But then we get one of my favorite collaborations of 2 of the most wonderful people that we could possibly have ever met in LA. And again, talking about our community, we moved to LA trying to find a techno community. And the techno community was welcoming, but they weren't as welcoming as we had hoped, and the direction just didn't go that way. And it's totally fine because we met Ryan and Chelsea Maker.
Yeah, we are makers. Probably one of the most, I don't know, interesting people we could get on the label, just in terms of how the whole thing came to be. I met a good friend of theirs. He was a work colleague of mine, a great guy named Nick, who would end up telling me, I just remember I was working with him at a publishing company, and every day I felt like he would tell me, he's like, you have to check these guys out. Like, they're incredible. They've got a few different bands that they make music under. And he would tell me, he's like, you specifically are going to love Chelsea, the girl, one half of We Are Makers. And I was like, cool, I'm super down. And we ended up connecting with them. It was later in the year 2021.
Yeah, we meet at a bar in Pasadena, and they don't drink, so that's kind of funny too, because we're like meet them at a bar, and then like they don't drink, and Chelsea's wearing this like rock star like 70s hat, and Ryan's like wearing like rocker flannel and stuff, and we're like, wow, these guys are pretty fucking cool.
They're too cool, and we were like, okay, we were like, all right, we'll get an hour with them. If we can even just get an hour of their time to see like what they're all about, what they are looking for.
Then we'll just get out of there.
Yeah, like we won't hassle them. We don't really need to like chew their ear out about like all the things we can do. But we ended up spending all afternoon and evening with them.
With them.
It was conversation. It was just getting to know them and understand where their creativity came from.
It was like talking to like an old friend.
Yeah.
And they invited us over to their place, and we met their dog.
It was great. Shout out to Willow.
Yeah, sweet Willow. It was amazing, and it was the start of an amazing collaboration, which I've gotten to. I've been fortunate enough to let them back me as Nicky Manos. When I've played live.
We were in one of their music videos.
In one of their music videos, we released 4 of their songs.
Yeah, 4 songs with them. And it's been a really, really fun. That has been a really fun signing, only because before that they're like some high octane rock. They just brought like a whole nother level of like some garage rock. Like the 2 of them are insanely talented at writing music. It was just such a really cool opportunity to, again, get really cool people, really diverse people compared to who was already on the label, involved with the label.
That also know how to work professionally and on a budget.
Yeah.
They work on a pretty tight budget as well, because, again, living in LA and a band, that costs money. They work incredibly efficiently, and my very first show I played with them as Nicky Manos. We're playing a show in Phoenix, and I wanted to have a backing band, at least just Ryan and Chelsea, just to kind of fill out that sound more, and why not? Like, and so I asked them to play with me, and I also asked them to do a set, and we rehearsed 0 times before the concert. I just would send them videos of me performing through the set, and I sent them some charts and things, And then we talked about it a couple times. They sent me like 1 or 2 videos of them playing through stuff with just like computer audio. And it's like, well, we're going to go on stage and do this. You know, my first time ever singing and playing live in front of an audience, and the first time I'm even playing with these guys on stage playing these songs. And it went so great. Brian and Chelsea were so prepared and they were so professional, and it felt great to be able to do that with them. And I mean, if you're a musician, I think you would realize how difficult that is to pull that off successfully, like basically flawlessly. And that was really cool. And so yeah, one of the best collaborations and best signings we've had at the label. Every single one of the artists we've signed, I think, is the best, just because it's all different. Like not
So
one,
different.
not one person is the same. Even like the different rock artists, like Jake of Drunken Logic, his lyrics are very politically charged, socially charged, and he's a solo artist that works under a band name, and his music has pop influence and these indie influences, and you know, he wants to go a little bit more controversial with some of the things he'll talk about. We Are Makers is all about love, psychedelic love, and it's so fun and it's so wonderful. And both those people are so professional but so different.
Yeah.
And they're just the best. It's so great to have that, as well as the electronic artists, as well as the hip hop artists.
Yeah.
I think to this day, Luchador is probably one of the best rappers you've never heard. If you haven't heard him actually rap,
You have
and
to.
just really pay attention, his rhyming is absolutely incredible. Dan is a classically trained, incredible singer who has incredible range and incredible tone. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on about every single person, you know? So it's like one of those things where you see that diversity start to really flourish. So here we are starting out from Valencia with nothing to here we are now with a full-on label with diversity and personality and character. And yeah, it was really cool to see 2021, these artists all come together and us start to figure out how we're going to move into 2022 into a post-pandemic world.
2021 was an incredible year for getting people signed onto the label, releasing music, starting the podcast. But then 2022 was when we came out of the pandemic, and that's really when people started touring again. So I know you personally, as Nikki Manos, other than releasing music, you got to go on tour. You were playing with We Are Makers as your backing band, but everybody was starting to come back out. Florian started Whipped Cream in Berlin.
A new type of festival, a new type of concert performance that he does. That it's the kinky side of Berlin. Really cool, really awesome, completely different than what he was doing when I knew him in 2015. And that's why we invest in artists. Is you see instead of their music, because artists change. Artists need to have that flexibility to do new things. Emily getting out of Just Whiskey and doing her own thing. Deliriously Serious experimenting with their different sounds. Jake experimenting with his different sounds. You experimenting with releasing your own music and figuring out how to... She's been my vocal coach, my vocal producer. Again, we work on a budget. So she helps me work in that kind of capacity too and help engineer my stuff.
Yeah, and you doing all the again, just Ironfist and Nikki Manos alone are two huge undertakings because they're completely different people doing completely different things. So it's really cool to watch not only all this production angle of things happening where everybody's developing it, but then watching them, bring it into the real world. Emily kind of kicked in the high gear. She's doing a lot of touring now. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit in a little while. But yeah, everybody started to come out of the pandemic, and even though there were still music releases happening in 2022, obviously on our label, your big one being Rebels Twilight, the Nikki Manos LP that came out. It was more focusing on helping people get back into the world, kind of look at touring from a new angle now that everything was opening back up again. Like, who did we want to reach out to? Where did we want to play?
And a brand new perspective on video content and the importance of video and digital releases. Because the three-headed beast of the music industry, if you want to be an independent artist or a major artist, but the major artists have the benefit of the financial backing and the people to the team to do all of this, is you have to have good video content. That's music videos, that's lyric videos, that's social media content, that's artwork. Live performance videos. Yeah, it's the artwork for the thing. That's the thing that all artists usually are like, oh, I forgot to do artwork for this. Yeah, I'm the one that always does that. I'll always finish a song and I'll be like, I don't have anything. I got to make something, you know? So like learning how to do all of that, understanding the appreciation for video content, but also understanding that you have to have good live shows, good video content, and you have to do digital releases. You have to release music, obviously, but without the other two things, you really can't grow super well. The way you build a community is by getting out there and playing in front of a community. The way that you release music is by actually releasing music. These are all obvious things, but it's easier said than done.
Yeah, and the pandemic made it difficult because at one point you could only do, one thing, which was all the self-produced things at home or in a studio. The whole live element was cut out. So it was really important when that came back into the sphere that it needed to be reintroduced and everybody kind of needs to be party to it because, like you're saying, it's so pivotal to the career that not only are you getting your digital space kind of, solidified, but you're also gaining your spot in the physical world as well.
So just being physical, even Scott's playing these, he's selling his artwork at markets currently right now in 2023. We have, We Are Makers and Jake, and I have a tour lined up for the fall. We have Deliriously Serious. Luke is going to work on something. Dan is a slam poet. He performs in slam.
Emily's got a big tour coming up. She's going to be doing some dates, not just in Nashville area, but she's actually branching out. So
Florian's always playing.
Yeah, Florian's always playing. I think that goes without saying.
Jay, another thing we need to talk about is Jay went to go and work for the Golden Knights in Las Vegas. So he's been doing that. So even though he's maybe not on video and being like a celebrity, chef personality or whatever, he is still doing his career and getting himself back out there and finding his community and finding his skills as a manager and as a leader in this field.
Yeah, it was big in 2022 that everybody again get back into the world, and then the other big thing that happened in 2022 that would make a huge mark on Rabotat is that we also moved away from Los Angeles and we relocated to New Mexico in July. Actually, almost a year from now. Maybe a year ago today from when we're filming.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah,
I'm getting ready to, at least.
Yeah, so
we were definitely all packed up.
And ready to go. Yeah.
Series of events happened that made that happen. We were sad to leave Los Angeles, and it's bittersweet. It's always bittersweet to move. Like Alex and I now have moved 4 times together, and every single time it's always a bittersweet thing. Even when I moved by myself to move to Boston.
Change and moves.
Yeah, I think everyone knows that. But the LA one, just specifically, my grandpa passed away in 2020. He was a huge foundation for my entire family, especially me, and a huge supporter of me. And he was a musician, and he took care of me, and he really understood, like my dream. But when he passed away in 2020, I kind of felt like I needed to step up and help out my grandma, help out. He has a cabin here and he has a house down there and a big house. And it was it's a house that he built from scratch, like he paid for it himself or he built it himself. There's lots of things that my grandpa did as a craftsman. Again, another appreciation for Rabotat, and the idea of crafting great things was something that I learned my whole life from Chet Heil, my grandpa. And I just felt like I needed to be closer to my grandma to help her with things, and help out with this, the responsibilities. And I just was feeling disillusioned from LA. It was getting more and more expensive, and it felt daunting to hit the job search again after all that momentum had been taken away, and we've learned all these new skills.
Well, and the city had changed too. I think that the city, when we moved to it, Los Angeles, was a different place than when we left. The pandemic fundamentally changed the face of most places, I think, around the world. But LA, especially after the protests and pandemic, it just became a completely different...
And it's a big city, and we were kind of realizing...
We didn't want to do that.
Do you really need a big city in order to have a community? We learned how to have a community digitally, and we learned that a lot of people that want a community want a location that they can feel safe and creative in. Sometimes that's digitally, sometimes that's physical, but that doesn't mean that it has to be in a major city.
No.
And so now all of a sudden our map opens up from 3 cities, LA, New York, and Nashville, to going
4.
to 4 to Cloudcroft, New Mexico. But it's also it's been a nice transition to try to figure out where we go next. This isn't like the permanent location and permanent spot, but it has been something that has allowed us to breathe, save some money, and focus on creating great art, and allowed me to help out my family. And Alex, since the pandemic, has been able to work remotely. So she's able to visit her family more. She can afford to visit her family more now that we're not paying as much as we were paying for rent.
That's exactly, yeah. There was a lot of resources we're able to save by being in New Mexico. Also, just being able to be close to family. There's a lot of. It was just the time.
It just felt right.
The timing of when we had to do it and what we did, I think, was
and
important.
The Nicky Mono stuff. It was like leaning that way anyway, like for me, finding the Nicky Mono stuff.
Right. So we had to, it was an important move, a necessary move. And also the big person that we would also then gain from that move, also that we've gained a proximity to, is we started working directly with Deliriously Serious's graphic designer, Will Forsyth, as well.
This right here?
He is the designer of this logo that you're seeing right here.
This 5-year logo.
So he's incredible. He's done all the Deliriously Serious stuff. So if you're looking at anything we've released from them, it's got his name all over it in terms of the visual. We started our merch store, and in doing so brought in a lot of his designs, and we've seen a huge response, especially from Will's stuff. So he deserves a special shout out, because I think technically he's like the newest member of Rabotat, but it's kind of where we've ended up. Our story at this point is in New Mexico, but in 5 years it'll be interesting to see where we kind of go from there. So on that note, that's kind of our retrospective.
That is the whole retrospective.
That is the Rabotat retrospective. It's the timeline. Nick gave you a lot to chew on. I gave you a little bit to chew on. We have a really big story, and it was super. I just felt like it was worth talking about, because it's a really cool story, and I think it goes to show that sometimes things take time and it takes work and development, but it's really cool when you start to see something that you have an idea of actually come to fruition. Like we always had the dream of having a community of people, but to actually see people want to be a part of the community, or to reach out to people and have them actually want to engage. And again, we are lucky. We have a lot of people I would consider a ride or die, and I don't say that just loosely. That's a pretty big commitment. And I would say that a lot of these artists that we've worked with, whether it's just a capacity of having them on circuitry or releasing their music or helping them with their careers, that is a huge honor, and that it's amazing. That's all I can really say. We are so blessed. We're lucky. We know a lot of really gifted and talented people that are really doing a lot of cool stuff that if you aren't paying attention yet, I hope that you do, because it's worth, you have to.
Absolutely.
And so now at this point, let's do a quick recap of what we have coming up next, because it is our 5-year. This is just the beginning, this podcast, but coming in a few days, we will also have a merch drop. So the design you're seeing me wear, the Scott Van Orden design, the design that Nick is wearing, Will Forsyth's design, and the design that Nick wore in last month's podcast, the Fangoria one, Morgan's design. These will all be available exclusively on our web store starting in July. And so you can make your purchase. I would highly recommend maybe you want to get one of each, because you just don't know. They all look really good. I will say.
And they're green. They help the environment. It's hand spun, fabric, biodegradable. Like I found the most ethically like sourced like made to order t-shirt company I could possibly find.
And they are super comfy. I mean, look at this. The cut is super cute. I can't wait to buy a couple more in this style, just because I like a room to breathe a little bit in my t-shirt. And I feel like, yeah, I'm really digging this design specifically. I think all of them were so cool. They're all reimaginings of our original logo. So head to our web store, make your purchase, get all 3. Get a tote bag.
Well, after the merch, though, we also have a 5-year compilation that we're putting together, which is awesome. There's some really cool stuff. We have unreleased Drunken Logic stuff. We got a really special collaboration between 2 of our well, 3 of our favorite
We have
artists.
some
But
interesting, yeah.
we got some really great things. So be on the lookout for that. That's coming out when we have our Halloween circuitry, which is coming out this year.
Fall 2023 is going to be a big one for us because not only will it be our big time for circuitry again, we'll be doing some fun things during that show, but we will also be unleashing our compilation. So keep an eye out in the next couple months because we have some really cool stuff coming. We might have a giveaway or 2 also in the periphery, so make sure you follow our channels. If you haven't yet, make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Wherever you listen to your podcast, follow us.
Tell a friend.
Tell a friend.
We could use all the help we can get. Like it's we're having a great time doing this, but we need fans, you know? We want people to watch us and we want people to enjoy this work. And it's not just for us. It's not like a pat on our shoulder. It's for the other artists. These people that we work with, they put their heart and soul into the art that they create. And I want as many people as possible to see it. And Alex and I are doing everything in our power to make sure that people do. And thank you to all the people we've worked with. Thank you to all the people that have supported us for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
In and out, ups and downs. It's been absolutely amazing, and I couldn't ask for anything differently, and I wouldn't want it any different.
You wouldn't have changed the ride at all?
No, not at all.
Good.
And thank you.
You too.
I wouldn't have been able to do it without her. I was someone who had this like lofty idea to try to build like an artist community. I didn't know anything about that back end or how to run a business or anything like that, and let alone. Being an artist is hard. You face a lot of rejection, a lot of self-doubt with your art. You ask any writer or artist, they will tell you that there is sometimes a huge monkey on your back making you feel terrible, and you need someone, if you can't do it yourself, to help you.
Yeah.
And I thank you for all the help you've done in making this label what it is and making my career what it is and my life.
You too.
Thank you.
So much of everything that we've done.
I couldn't do without you.
You either.
And it's not the mezcal talking. I'm actually just fine. It's okay. I'm not we're not like wasted here. All right. This is a real convo. I just wanted to say thank you guys.
Yeah.
I really do. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Seriously, to all of you, you have no idea. You've changed my life so greatly, but I wouldn't have changed this ride either. It's been really fun. I know that every ride has its different turns, but I can't wait to keep taking this path and just see where in 5 years I have big fever dreams for a big party or something fun for us. So I'm looking forward to the next few years.
Me too.
And keep an eye out. We are also going to have some events to be sharing in the next couple months, some really cool collaborations, so stick with us.
Make sure you follow us so you stay in the loop.
Follow us, and thank you again. Thank you for your support, and cheers to Rabotat Radio episode number 10. You don't have any more mezcal?
No. Cheers.
All right. Well,
Just
actually, you have a
finish it.
sip.
Oh,
you
you
have a sip.
Have a sip.
Take
Cheers.
the sip. Cheers. Thanks, everyone.